right, tall people problems, and a cookie to deal with. I love it. All right, how we doing today? Doing good? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tyler Hayes. I do help serve here at Compass as one of the service hosts, so you see me up here oftentimes doing announcements. But I'm excited to be up here today, and again, happy Father's Day. I'm super excited you're here this morning, and then I'm sure you're going to get out and enjoy this beautiful weather this afternoon, watch some golf, play some golf, whatever you love to do. But happy Father's Day. And I want to go ahead, he should be all right. Truett left his phone up here. We'll be good. I want to go ahead and start this morning. How many people in here have ever played a game with a child? Everybody, right? Thank you. Everybody has played a game with a child. So my son, who's sitting out here today, loves to play games. And about a few months ago, he sat down and he's like, Dad, I made a game at school. Can we play tonight? And I'm like, sure, yeah, let's do this. And so I sit down with him, and he sits down and he lays out this huge sheet of paper. I mean, right here. Huge sheet of paper. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. And then I start to see, oh, this is a football field. Like, he has made a football field. He's got it green, got the lines on it. It's looking good. I'm like, okay, this is going to be good. We'll see where this goes. Next thing I know, he's got goalposts that pop up on the ends. 3D. Yeah, this is all homemade, by the way. 3D. I'm like, oh, wow, this is impressive. This is impressive. Next comes little mini football players that he made. And I can't tell you what they're made out of, but he made them. They got Lego-ish stuff. He made these little football players, and he lines them up on each side of this sheet of paper. And I'm just sitting here watching this. Mind you, I'm just going, this is amazing. I don't know. We'll see where this goes. Next comes out benches for the players. Okay? He makes benches for these players. So we're lining up these players on the benches on each side. And then the football comes out, of course. There's got to be a football, a little football made out of paper. Yeah, and then I sit down, and then, of course, what all guys do, right? I look at my son, because there was like a moment of silence, and I'm like, so how do we play? What do we do now? And I could tell his wheels were spinning. You know how kids are when they make up a game? You sit there, and they're just like, okay, I got this out, but now what the heck are we going to do? How's this game actually going to work? So we sit down, and I can see him spinning. We're getting the rules going as we're sitting there trying to figure out this game, and of course, I'm sitting there thinking, I just want to know how I'm going to beat you, right? That's what guys at. We just want to know how am I going to beat you at this game? That's all I want to know. How is this going to happen? So we sit down and start playing this game, and it's funny when you play with kids. Some of you, I hopefully relate to this. What I found out was I had absolutely zero chance of beating my son at this game. You want to know why? Because it was his game. It was his game, and the rules kept changing throughout the entire game. I was sitting there and I was going, I'm about to score a touchdown, and then suddenly a rule changed. You know what I mean? So I had absolutely zero chance at winning this game. It's just, that's what you play with a kid that makes up a game. That's what happens, right? So it got me thinking about this morning, and it got me thinking about game changers and how, in our lives, we are all in desperate need of a game changer, aren't we? We are in need of a game changer in this life. And so this morning's going to be, here's what it is in a nutshell. You're going to get a 10,000-foot view of Christianity in a nutshell today. So if you're new this morning, or you don't know what being a Christian is about, you're going to get that 10,000-foot view of what this is all about. And you can walk out the door this morning and decide whether you buy it or not. And I encourage you to, ask the questions and dig and think about it. But we're really going to take a real high-level view of what Christianity is. And I want to start this morning by looking at page 1 of the Bible. And I'm not going to go in there and read it right now. I'm just going to give, again, just a quick overview for a minute. But page 1 of the Bible is creation, right? And ever since the Hubble telescope, we get so much information now about how everything started. And it's amazing, actually, how much science and the Bible agree with each other. It's pretty incredible. However, the Bible goes one step further in page 1 and talks about the designer behind the design. and the creator behind creation. I mean, we go outside and we live in one of the most beautiful places on earth, I believe. Bend is incredible, and you look at the mountains and the river and everything. And what the Bible is basically saying is that design that we see outside, there is a designer behind that. There is a creator behind that. And that's really where the Bible begins, again, in a nutshell. And I want to then jump right into reading Genesis 1:27, because this is where the pinnacle of his creation comes in, which is us. And I know Drew has been in a series for the last month or so called Identity Theft, and we learned a lot about our identity and what that means for us. And really, Genesis 1:27 is where this starts. It says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. So right here we get, and again, this is what Drew had talked about in these past series, and you can watch those online, but this is where we see where God created us to be like him. And the one thing we know about God is that God is love, right? So God created us to love him and love each other. That's what it boils down to. He created us to have perfect love with him, our creator, and perfect love with each other. That's where it starts. We're the pinnacle of his creation. We were made in his image. And I'm going to go there this morning because I'm shifting it up here, but I'm going off track. Sorry. We have a thing in our family that's called the Anderson Award, okay? My wife's maiden name is Anderson, okay? And here's the reason for the Anderson Award. We could be in the middle of Disneyland talking to Mickey Mouse, okay? Everything, you can't go wrong there, right? You're happy. And my wife can look at me and say something that deflates everything. I mean, she could look at me and go, hey, hon, did you see what just happened in the news? I'm like, we're talking to Mickey Mouse right now. Like, everybody just shuts down, you know? And it's her heart, because she's always worried about everybody. But there's a name created for this, and it's even better because my brother-in-law, so my wife's sister, her husband, has even created an award for this, so literally an award. So if it comes up in conversation, you know, they bend down and we place a little award around their neck for taking the air out of the room with something. So anyway, to say all that, I'm about to win the Anderson Award right now, okay? Because everything is hunky-dory with creation, and we are created as the pinnacle of God's creation. But then what happens? We screw it up, don't we? We screw it up. On this game board that God laid out for us, we screw it up. And we see that in Genesis 2, 8 through 9. Let's take a look at that. It says, the Lord God planted a garden toward the east in Eden, and there he placed the man whom he had formed. Out of the ground the Lord caused to grow every tree that is pleasing to the sight and good for food, the tree of life, and also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So in these verses right here, we see that God created us, right? He created us, and now he's put us on the game board, per se. He's placed us on the game board, and he has also placed on the game board this tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And I don't know about you, but growing up in Sunday school, nobody told me about the tree of life. I just heard about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You don't realize that there were two trees in this garden. And just in a summary, we've got this tree that's a tree of immortality, God created us basically to live forever. He did not create us to die. That's the tree of life. And then we got the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And if we jump ahead, I want to jump right ahead to Genesis 3, 6 through 7. Here's where we messed it up, right? When the women saw that the tree was good for food and that it was a delight, or some of your versions may say pleasing to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took from the fruit and ate, and she gave it to her husband with her, and he ate as well. So this is it, right? This is where we mess it up. This is where we mess it up. And it's interesting because we enter this game board, we mess it up, and we see that, you know, for how long ago this took place, this is the same exact thing we wrestle with today, isn't it? This is the same. We wrestle with what is good, pleasing, and desirable to me, to you. Same thing. We are deceived into thinking about what is good, pleasing, and desirable for ourselves. And that's ultimately where what it comes down to. And for me, the first question I always ask, and I don't know if you all ask this, but is why the heck did God start the game this way? Like, why did he put that tree in the garden anyway? Why would we be set up for this? And really, the simple answer to that is, if we are created in God's image and God is love, he wants us to enjoy that love with him and each other. We all know, right? Love is a choice. If we were forced into loving each other, then it's not love. Love is a choice. So, in other words, if there's a choice to love, there had to also be a choice to unlove. Bottom line, if there's a choice to love, there also had to be a choice to unlove. There had to be a choice to abuse. There had to be a choice for pain, death. There had to be a choice for suffering. There had to be a choice for all of that. If there's a choice to love, there also had to be a choice to unlove. And that's where we're at, and that's where we mess up. And really, and I'm not going to read any of the verses in it. I encourage you to go check out Genesis chapter 3, is where you see the result of this. The result of this choice, which is what? The result is brokenness. It's brokenness in our relationships, brokenness in our marriages. It's pain, it's suffering, it's everything that we see in this world today that is tough, right? It's the brokenness in this world, and that's where it started, right there. And so here we are, just a quick summary. We are created in God's image to be in fellowship with him in love and with each other in love. We get on the game board and we mess it up. We've been hiding ever since. It's like Adam and Eve, right? We've been hiding, we've been battling, I've been battling, what is good, pleasing, and desirable to me. That's been the battle. And the best part is that there's a game changer. That's the good part. There was the Anderson Award, but now we're going to shift back, okay, for a second. There is a game changer, and the game changer is Jesus Christ. That's really what it is. God looks down at us and he goes, this is not what I intended. This was not what I intended for you, to live in this brokenness and this pain and this suffering, and I'm going to change the game. Just like my son did for me. He says, I'm going to change this game. And he does that. In Romans 5:8 we see, but God demonstrated his own love towards us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Let me say that a different way. But God demonstrated his own love for us, that while we were still messing up the game, he sent Christ to die on the cross for us. He changed the game for us. He completely changed the game for us. And he does not want to allow us to live in brokenness and pain and suffering. And so he changed the game. And I'm going to shift gears here just for a second and talk to fathers. The rest of you, find a way to apply this to your life. I hope you can. But I'm talking to fathers right now for a second, including myself. And it's so funny because I did not talk to Truett before this. But fathers, we are game changers. We are truly game changers. That's what we are. And it's funny, I looked up the definition on the internet, which we know is always true. And the definition of game changer, I'll read it, is an event, idea, procedure that affects a significant shift in the current matter of doing or thinking about something. That was the definition of a game changer online. I'm going to change that definition. I'm into changing things this morning, apparently. I'm going to change that for you, and I'm going to say this. A game changer is a father that affects a significant shift in the current matter of doing or thinking about something. That's the definition of a game changer, and that's what we are. That's what fathers are. And God has given us the ability to do that. And, I think there's no better example. I was thinking about examples in the Bible of, what would be a good example of a game changer, and what would that look like? And I don't think there's any better example than looking at Paul. And for those of you who don't know who Paul is, just a quick summary of Paul. His original name was Saul, and he was actually persecuting Christians, killing Christians. That's what he was doing. And then he had this game-changing moment where God completely changed his life, the ultimate game changer, changed his life, and his whole thinking and way of doing things shifted from what is good, pleasing, and desirable for me to now shifting to what is good, pleasing, and desirable to God. That's ultimately what happened in Paul's life. So, of course, Paul's going to be passionate everywhere you read in the Bible about this game changer and about how we can be game changers in people's lives around us. And again, thinking about fathers, I want to read this verse, and then we'll go over here. But 1 Corinthians 9, and I'm just going over a couple of verses here. But 1 Corinthians 9, 22 through 23 says, and this is coming from Paul. He says, "To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, so that I might by all means save some. I do all things for the sake of the gospel, so that I might become a fellow partaker of it." So here we go. You might be wondering how this is going to connect to all this. And people's first reaction when they read these verses is, Paul was super inconsistent. Why? I mean, what are we told today? That we should not ever, we should just be us, and we just need, and to some extent I agree that there are situations where we can abuse this, and if we're trying to be like somebody else for any reason, that's not what he's talking about here. People also assume that maybe he was shifting the message or the gospel depending on who he's talking about, and that's also not what these verses are talking about. What this verse is talking about and why this relates is that Paul was saying he was flexible. He changed the manner and the approach at which he approached people in his life. That's really what he's talking about. He changed his manner and approach. He didn't change the message. He didn't change the gospel. He just changed how he approached people. That's what he's talking about. And just think about for a second the game board that's laid out for our kids today in this world. What is culture telling our children today, regarding this game of life that is set up for them? And I think you can all, think of things off the top of your head. But I think what the world is telling them is we need to pursue money, status. We need to pursue friends' approval. We need to pursue achievements, sports, academics. The list goes on and on and on. That's what our children are hearing, and that's the information they're getting. In other words, culture is telling us to pursue what is good, pleasing to us. What is good and pleasing to us. That's what the world is telling us. And so, fathers, we have this chance to be game changers in their life. And I got to really think about this. I'm like, sometimes I get caught up in this, I know with my kids, and sometimes I want to change their choices. I don't know if you all understand what I mean by that. I mean, I want to change their choice before they even make it. You know what I mean? Like, you want to change their choices, right? And really, instead, we should be changing the way they're thinking. Like, in the midst of it, instead of trying to change their choices, we've already determined that God gave us a choice, and each and every one of us, in each and every one of our children, is going to make a choice. That's going to be the case. We all get to make that choice. We can't change that choice. What we can do is be that game changer in their life and shift the way of thinking from what is good, pleasing, and desirable for me into what is good, pleasing, and desirable for God and for the people around us. And that mindset for me is really, something that I have to battle against, because so often we just want to fix it. Like, don't do that. Like, what do you think? I mean, I worked in the residence hall, okay? So I sat down with college students every day and looked at them and go, what are you thinking? And, but really it's about how do we talk to our children? How are we going to be that game changer in somebody's life and shift their thinking about things, shift how they are doing things? And that's really what Paul was able to do in that message. He was able to be flexible in his approach for different people. Because one coworker and another friend and your child, they can't all be approached the same way. That's what Paul's talking about. If we're going to be game changers, we have to approach people differently. That's what he's saying. And so this morning, there's no better way for me to illustrate this than to talk about my dad. And some of you know my dad. And I was very fortunate to have who I believe is the best dad on earth. He is amazing. And he was a game changer in my life. But more than anything, I got to witness from a little bit of a distance how my dad was a game changer in my brother's life. So my brother, just a little bit of backstory on my brother. My brother was a foster child and came into our home when he was 1.5 years old. And he came from brokenness, what we've been talking about, a broken world. He was abused as an infant. He was in a drug home. And my parents immediately were game changers and brought him into our house and ended up adopting him. Just an incredible kid. But let me tell you something. Watching my dad, the illustration from my dad just being a game changer in his life. Okay, so my dad, just, a little bit about him. So he's a sports guy. Okay, I don't know how else to explain it. He's a sports fanatic. He was the basketball coach at Bend High for I don't know how many years, too many to count. And we are sports nuts. So of course my brother comes into our home, and he could care less about sports, right? He was a music guy, an incredible singer, a guitarist, and my dad had to change his approach. He could not parent my brother like he parented me. He couldn't do that. If he was going to be an ultimate game changer in his life, he had to change his approach. Watch this happen. Anybody here heard of the Domino Room? Huh? People are, yeah, no, I don't want you to know that I've heard of the Domino Room. No, Domino Room's like a little hole-in-the-wall place downtown where there's concerts. And this is what I'll say about the Domino Room. You would not find my dad there, typically. Okay, you just wouldn't. And yet, he would be there. That's where my brother would be, and my dad would be there. He would show up and be there. He had to change his approach and how he approached things. And my brother battled addictions and drug abuse and alcohol. It was not easy. And the one thing about my dad that I appreciate is he never sacrificed the gospel. He changed his approach, but he never sacrificed the gospel. There was a moment where my dad took my sister and I up to Washington because my brother was getting out of prison at the time, and we went up there to meet him there. We obviously wanted to meet him there. We were praying and hoping that he was in a place where that choice was, I need help, right? And what's incredible again about my dad and how he was a parent is that we went up there with the intent to we just wanted to love on him and see if he was ready for us to bring him home. And, the difficult part was he wasn't. So my dad doesn't sacrifice the gospel. He said, when you're ready, we're here. And we turned around and that same day drove all the way back to Oregon and left him there. These are and this is more on an extreme level, but what I'm saying is he showed up, he changed his approach, and he never sacrificed the gospel. That's what a game-changing father is, and that's what we've been given the ability to do in our lives. And that's why I wanted to highlight that, because it was truly amazing for me to step back and see this all happen. Because I experienced it myself with him, but I got to really watch it happen right in front of me with some very challenging and difficult situations. And so back to just, looking at this overall picture, we talked about this 10,000 foot view of Christianity. So just to summarize, God has created us. We are the pinnacle of his creation. We are made in his image to love him and love each other, right? We get on the game board, we mess it up. The ultimate game changer changes the game for us. Jesus Christ comes and dies on the cross for us. And basically he says, I'm not going to allow you to live in this broken world. I'm not going to allow you to live in a broken relationship. I'm not going to allow you to live in pain, suffering forever. That's the game-changing moment. And it's one of the things, and then ultimately what he wants us to do, he wants us to bring us back to what he originally intended, right? And the thing that we need to be thinking about, I'm going to try to illustrate this, but James 4:14, look at this verse. It says, and many of us know this verse, but it says, yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. In other words, our time on this earth and this brokenness and this pain and this hurt is short. Let me demonstrate. Okay. I don't know what's this is going to smell like something for the first row. I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. Ready? See if we can see this. You're born, you go to school, you get a job, you die. Right? I don't know how else to explain it. If you didn't see it, right here. You were born, you go to school, you have a family, you die. But let's be honest. That's exactly what this verse is talking about. It's a vapor. Our life on this earth is so short, and some of us have lived that. People have left us way too early. This life is way too short, and the Bible is really the first 2 pages lays it out. It lays out the instructions, right? It tells us what God intended. God then changes the game. And I think what some people misunderstand about the Bible is they think that everything in the Bible is everything we have to do to get to God. But it's the complete opposite. Everything in this Bible, after the first 3 pages on, is everything that God did to get back to us, if you think about it. That is the Bible. And ultimately, we then see Romans 10:13, and it says, "For whoever will call on the name of the Lord will be saved." We have such a hard time receiving gifts, don't we? We have a really hard time receiving gifts, and that's what this is saying. The game changer came and changed the game, and all we have to do is receive it. There's nothing we can do. There's nothing we have to do. We just have to put our hands out and receive what God has done for us. And I'll be honest with you. I was thinking about this. I'm like, this is like, I wouldn't be standing up here, I guess is what I'm trying to say, if I didn't feel like God changed my life. You know what I mean? If I received that gift, when I received that gift and nothing happened in my life, nothing real happened in my life, no game-changing, moments in my life, then I wouldn't be standing up here. Bottom line, I'm standing up here because I received that gift, and he has been changing my life ever since. And that's why I'm standing up here. It's real. This is a real thing. And, back to my dad and my brother for a second. He, you might say, well, that moment we went to go meet my brother when he was getting out of prison, like, what kind of impact did that have? And in the moment, it didn't feel like much. It felt like we failed. But I can tell you something. What my dad did that day was a game-changing moment for my brother. It was a game-changing moment. We didn't know it at the time, but it was a game-changing moment. And what's crazy about all this, and what's so powerful about all this, is my brother passed away recently, and this was in his pocket. This picture of this card was in his pocket. So we know it was game-changing. We know everything, my parents, my dad, we know what they did as parents and as a father changed his life. We know it did. Didn't feel that way, right? Parents, there's moments where I stop and I'm like, I'm done. I don't know what else to do in this situation, right? But everything we do, if we're on it, we have to constantly be on it and shifting that thinking from what is good, desirable, and pleasing to me, shifting it to what's good, desirable, and pleasing to God. We have to shift the thinking. We have to shift the thinking, and we have to continually do it. There can't be lapses. Like, we have to stay on it because kids take what? They take this and it goes here. I mean, they take whatever they can get. And this is just an illustration that, I believe that everything that was done in my brother's life was a game-changing moment. And the gospel was never sacrificed once, and I believe that's why he had this in his pocket, when he passed away. And so I really just want to leave you this morning. I didn't want to leave it all heavy because I believe my brother's in heaven. I'm going to be with him for eternity. I truly believe that. But I know what my brother would tell you if he was standing here today. He would want any of you who hasn't experienced the game-changing moment from the ultimate game changer, he would want to ask you to receive that gift. That's what he would want. He would want you to receive that gift and allow God to change your life, because that's what. And again, if it didn't change my life, I wouldn't be up here standing in front of you. It's a real life-changing. He's a living God that changes our lives, and that's what he wants you. And you know what else he would want? He would want fathers, mothers, friends, coworkers to go out and be game changers for the people around you. I mean, that's what we're called to do. We're called to allow him to work through us and be game-changing people for the people around us, be game-changing for this world, for the brokenness, the pain, the suffering. It's never going to go away until that mist is gone, right? Until we're in heaven for eternity. But we are here for a moment, and that's just the other part of this. It's just a moment. There's not a lot of time to make that decision and that choice. And there's not a lot of time to have a game-changing impact on people's lives. There's really no time to waste, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that's what I know he would want to say this morning. He would want us to surrender to the ultimate game changer. Let's go ahead and pray. Father, we are just so...